Our next game is Night Trap, and that was developed by Digital Pictures, published by Sega, originally for the Sega CD, because it's very, very, very original platform, the Hasbro Nemo, whatever it was called, didn't see release, so it came out for the Sega CD. Then it came out for a bunch of other things. It was out on the 32X, the 3DO, the PC, lots of systems. Its earliest release date was October 15th in 1992, and that is in North America. And this has kindly been nominated to us by BP Guimarius 23 on iTunes Brazil. Thank you for nominating Night Trap, because Night Trap is legendary.
Oh, for more reasons than one, I can tell you that. I don't know how much we wanted to glide on the infamous congressional hearings that this game was tangentially related to. I mean, I guess it's a story everyone's heard of by now, so...
Yeah, the interesting thing, Night Trap is a game that was infamous for being almost the video game equivalent of a video nasty. It was something like, oh, it's going to corrupt our children and destroy society. And it is one of the most goofy and innocent games you could possibly imagine. Even though the plot is a bunch of teenagers are taken to a house by a friend of theirs, and turns out the friend of theirs is a vampire, and her family are vampires, and they kidnap people and drain their blood. And that's the plot, but it's such a lighthearted experience. Like, very, very, very...
There's, like, no violence, no nudity, like, nothing objectionable, I'd say.
I mean, like, nothing objectionable. There is a horrible theme song.
Right now, that code is set as blue.
Well, I will...
Cut into that right here. Start playing the theme song in the middle of our discussion.
Definitely get that theme song. Night Trap! Something like that. I'm sorry, it's not quite burned into my memory.
It's a ripoff of Love Shack, if this is what you're saying.
I have no idea what it's supposed to be, but it is not a good song. And but yeah, so you are a member of the Sega Control Attack Team. I think that's the thing.
Oh my god!
Would you like to know what the acronym is?
Hey, they're ripping that off from that one Natsume game on the NES. I forget what the acronym for that was, but yeah, you can tell up front, like, this game is not serious in the least. It's just basically a playable B-movie in a way.
Yeah, and I think that's by far its most charming aspect, is the game was originally filmed, the footage was filmed in the 80s, and it was released in the early 90s, so there is a great deal of... Actually, like, it's a very late release for an 80s B movie that accidentally came out in 92, which is fun and very interesting. If you're wondering if you're playing it on a non-Sega platform, it is the Special Control Attack Team or whatever. The acronym is always SCAT, and they always call themselves SCAT, and it's really funny. But
so as far as how this game plays, basically, you are in charge of a bunch of different cameras and monitors.
You're placed in charge by SCAT, and you rig into you connect to the family security system in a really fridge creepy kind of way, in that they've actually set up an elaborate security system which has cameras in all of their rooms, including the bedrooms and bathroom, and that was one of the reasons I think the congressional hearing kind of seemed like a good idea, is that if you read it on paper, you're basically spying on people in their house through their affairs, and you can go into all of their rooms. But actually nothing untoward really happens, at least.
Wait. Yes. This game is totally the godfather of Five Nights at Freddy's. You think Scott Cawthon actually got some inspiration from this?
It's possible. It's a very interesting take on an FMV game, and I'll explain a little bit about that maybe a little later. But yeah, so you have these cameras And the catch is not only there are cameras, but there are traps. So the game takes place at night, and you operate traps. What a great name, you know. Really, really captures the sense of the game. Yeah.
Right,
Give a pat on the back.
point.
So,
yeah.
the vast majority of the gameplay is ignoring the plot and jumping between the cameras and looking out for these destitute vampires, these nomadic homeless ones. They're called augurs, and for some reason this family's house is absolutely infested with literally over like 100 augurs, I think, in the game. Like, there's so many of these motherfuckers.
and they look less like vampires and more like they're like they're all dressed up for an S&M party or whatever. They just have these like, you know,
they're all in black. They wouldn't be out of place in a goth club, basically.
Yeah, and they even have like completely black masks or whatever that like you can't see.
Okay, so the reason they do that is because they reuse the same footage about, well, I said 100 monsters, but I think there might be more, there may be a little less. But yeah, so these guys will enter the room that you are looking, and you'll see them, and they'll be like, they'll sneak around the room, and then you'll have a little bar down the bottom, and it'll go up and down, and it'll say, like, trap. And the idea is that's supposed to act as a kind of hot and cold system, and when that trap meter reaches full, you press a button on your controller, and then it will activate a trap, and a slapstick hilarity ensues, and like a bed will flip up, and it'll push them into the dresser, and then the dresser will collapse, and they'll fall into the prison or the inferno or whatever. Like, there's not specifically tells you what happens. It's just a bunch of steam flies up, and it goes, and then they disappear, and you count them as trapped. And there's lots of these. Sometimes glass cabinets fall, sometimes the walls twist, sometimes the ground opens up, the stairs become, you know, very, very classic. Stairs go from stairs to ramps, and they fall down in holes. It's it's very, very fun stuff, like visually very fun. You will see these scenes enough that at some point you'll be like, yes, it's that scene again, very funny. But there is a phenomenal one where a guy gets catapulted off the top of the house into a pit, like off the side of the house, which is absolutely genuinely hilarious, and reminds me of, I don't know, like Power Rangers sort of style, like special effects where they just kind of spring a guy clearly with like an upwards camera angle. It's like, whoa!
It's almost like a live-action Scooby-Doo of some sort. I don't know how far off base that is, but
it's pretty close. So what happens is that the main impetus for you is that if you don't trap enough of them, you will eventually be told by your scat commander. He'll be like, this situation's getting out of control. I guess you're not good enough. And then he'll just unplug the game, essentially.
Two other things I feel I should point out. Yeah. One, and here's the killer. You can, in most versions of this game, I'm not sure if they changed this in later versions, you can only see one camera at a time. So you constantly have to be flipping through every single room, looking for anything that might be happening, and it does not give you any time to watch anything interesting that might be going on.
It's one of the biggest criticisms, I think.
Like, you might be... There are times you're going to have, like, the family members hanging around, having conversation, singing into a hairbrush, taking a shower. You don't get to see that, because you have to keep paying attention to all these empty rooms that something might eventually happen in.
They're in the shower, and I can't look, because I gotta trap these stupid augurs. I can't believe this. This is bullcrap. But yeah, there's some cool stuff that happens. Sometimes an enemy, the augurs, will move between screens, so they'll appear on, say, the upstairs corridor, but you won't be able to trap them. And then they'll walk their way to, say, the stairwell, and then you'll be able to trap them on the stairwell, so you actually have to change cameras to keep an eye on them, to get them when they can be trapped. Now, one of the chief gimmicks is, of course, all these cameras are rolling in real time. And I do mean real time. There's not really any way to pause the game and look through all the cameras. You actually have to look, and every time you look, it takes a few seconds to change camera. Originally, the Nemo, the original system that this was going to be developed for, was a very strange VHS video hybrid system that was actually able to play multiple video tracks at once. And the idea was that with Night Trap, it would just seamlessly change between video. And the later releases of Night Trap get the transition time to pretty much instant, so you don't lose very much. But the Sega CD, you lose a little bit because the Sega CD is not the greatest CD thing ever made, but it works. So the idea is, I think it's supposed to be replayable. I think that's the complimentary to that, is that you play this game and you're not supposed to beat it the first time, because I think it's only like 25, 30 minutes long, in terms of strict length.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those practice makes perfect sort of deals where if you did know what to do on the offset, the game would feel like a bit of a rip-off. So in a way, they kind of want you to get your money's worth. Not like an adventure game where you like slowly learn and write down where the vampire thingies show up and what you have to do in order to apprehend them, and that's only something you can do through multiple playthroughs until you're ready to piece it all together in one fell swoop.
And it is, and the more as you switch cameras, you start to actually remember. You're like, okay, at 3 minutes there'll be the augurs here, so I just go to them, I'll trap them, and then you go back to the story, and you're like, yeah, there'll be more augurs in 20 seconds. I can watch this part of the story. And sometimes they'll have multiple story tracks running at the same time, so you can't physically watch both. You actually have to watch one or switch between them rapidly, and it's actually really cool, I think, personally, to have this basically a story that's been told in real time from multiple perspectives that you actually get to see, which is uncommon for movies and uncommon for games. It's a very cool idea, I think, even if the game doesn't always feel like it's working all the way there. It's pretty cool. And to catch you out, and this is a real gotcha in this game. Every so often, and it never changes in terms of the time when it happens, but every so often the characters will change the code for the security. So there's about 5 or 6 color codes. So you've got a button that changes what color code you're using. So
actually, real quick, this is going to be a funny story, which I kind of complained about the game too. A very long time ago, back during our old GConnect days, I live streamed this game for the Sega CD video where I played a bunch of those most notable Sega CD games. I don't know if I was doing well, but they were about to change the code, and Snarbu said something at that point, and I could not hear they changed the code too, and, it does not tell you again. If you miss it, that's it. Too bad.
Now, in the game's defense, you aren't supposed to be having a bunch of assholes shouting in your ear when you're playing the game. So, it's kind of a bit, but, you are supposed to be paying attention. And it's kind of cool, because they recorded the different recordings, so they'll be like, oh, we should change the code to red. So, the different codes is randomized, so you do actually have to pay attention to that and get the correct code each time, because it will change, which, you're talking pre-recorded footage here, and they tried really hard to actually, in some way, make it work, which I think is really, you got to give them props for putting effort where they could, because the CD speed of the Sega CD is not fast enough to stream video instantaneously. So I think it does some tricks with the way that the video is laid out on the discs, so that it can actually play back things quickly. And I think it might actually be that's why it can't reshuffle the sequences. They have to always be kind of the same order, which is, it's okay. And there's another little thing it does, which is there are moments where you have to trap enemies or you will lose because they'll kidnap one of the main characters. So cool stuff. Sometimes you're not supposed to trap characters. Again, they try, and I think it's kind of, for an FMV game, trying to actually be a little different, I think is a very, very noble goal. Especially when they didn't necessarily have to be, especially when they originally filmed the footage. Having said that, where do we put Night Trap?
I'd say it's maybe somewhat more of a game than Sewer Shark at the very least.
Yeah, I'm not going to question that. It does actually require a bit more thought in what exactly you have to do, and I don't know. I almost want to say this was possibly the best FMV game on the SCD, which, I still don't know how highly it should be ranked as a result of that, on top of the King Turd, as they say, but, You know, in premise, I don't think this game is actually that bad. I mean, it's heavily flawed in how it actually works, and it can get kind of repetitive to keep, keep notes of where all the various augers pop up and whatnot. But this is one I can say they definitely tried, and the results do come off as amusing, if nothing else. So, with that,
It's a fun little interactive movie that tries a little bit more than being a multiple choice sort of thing, which I think it's a noble goal. There aren't many games like Night Trap. There's Night Trap, and there's its pseudo-sequel Double Switch, and that's pretty much it for the genre. Until you move to Five Nights at Freddy's, which unfortunately hasn't inspired other games to make something that isn't Five Nights at Freddy's, but immensely worse. Stop making Five Nights at Freddy's clones, kids. I'm sick of it. They're not good.
Ah, what a soapbox. Well, if there's any place to say that, this would definitely be the place.
No one's nominated FNAF, but if you do, I actually don't mind that game, so I would rank it reasonably well. But having said that, look, I'm gonna highball Night Trap a little bit, because it's no secret, maybe I really like this game. I'm actually gonna highball it right here. Here we go, above Master of Magic. That's it's about number 81 on our list. I know that seems high, but it depends where you go with what is a game, what is a movie. Can a game that is basically a movie be challenge other games? And I think that it's a lot of fun in terms of it's got fun characters, it's got fun writing. The gameplay actually tries to incorporate the concept of FMV really well in a way that doesn't feel like it's messing with you. It tries to keep the replayability is maybe not great, but they really thought about how do we make a game replayable that's just a bunch of videos strung together. And I think they got most of the way there to a coherent experience.
Well, you do make a point, but I definitely wasn't looking that high when I wanted to place it. It does have to be said, though, that this game is very cheesy, and unless you RTFM, probably not immediately easy to know exactly what you're doing in it. But
well, there's very few. In its defense, there's almost no gotchas. This game very, very, very rarely will throw anything like, actually, you were supposed to do this, in terms of controls that you didn't understand or bizarre moon logic that you don't understand. It doesn't do that because it doesn't have the capacity to.
I guess that changing code is kind of the worst it gets in that way.
And the changing code is a nice idea, to try and actually keep you flicking around, which is
okay. All right, this is I am nonetheless going to lowball it a bit more and see what you think of me placing it theoretically between Lethal Enforcers and Clash of Steel.
I admit I'm okay with that. I just don't have quite as much seething contempt for Night Trap for whatever reason.
Yeah.
See, in my opinion, Night Trap is more fun than Lethal Enforcers. Crucify me if you have to, but actually, I really think it's more fun.
If you wanted to place it between Ninja Gaiden and Lethal Enforcers, I can work that out. I'm just not placing it above Ninja Gaiden. I'm sorry. I have to draw the line somewhere, man.
I get it. Ninja Gaiden is an important game. It's pretty good. I've already said I like Night Trap more, and that's mostly me. And I get that. I'm the kind of person that has a hard drive full of crappy movies from the 70s and 80s. So Night Trap is a very special game to me because it has all those elements that I look for in it. It's a very fun experience. It's not, it's not the best game, but I feel it's almost a mandatory game to play because it's just so. It's an interesting game, and it's not going to take much of your time to try it. Bob, what do you think?
That's all right with me, honestly.
All right.
If I can't move Bob, it's going to have to go below Ninja Gaiden because there's.
I'm okay with this. Go for it.
Okay, between Ninja Gaiden and Lethal Enforcers, which I still think is higher than it would rate on other lists. So
other lists suck, and that's why our list is the objective top games. 57,858 games of all time, because it is correct.
Yeah.
And this is where Night Trap is apparently going. As I said, this game is so worth playing. Even if you hate it, you'll be like, well, at least I never played a game like this before.
True.
Unless you played Five Nights at Freddy's, in which case,
yeah.
well, what can I say? Five Nights at Freddy's is an alternate take on the idea, but Night Trap's really cool. If you like Night Trap, there is Double Switch. That game is quite good as well. It mixes things up a tiny bit, so it's very good. And it's got the I think now, is it now the deceased Corey? I can't remember if this Corey's still alive or if he
Corey Haim
died. Yeah, maybe.
We should probably say R.I.P. Dana Plato, Kimberly from Different Strokes, who is actually one of the characters in Night Trap. She died all the way back in 1999, apparently. Damn. But,
Night Trap is, yeah, it's... What can we say? It's, it is an interesting game, and I like it, but you don't have to... You really don't, but it's fun. It's a different kind of fun.
I'd say even if it's not your type of game, it is definitely worth a check, because absolutely nothing was like this at the time. And I would say it is probably the least sucky of anything fully FMV based. I mean, it's either this or Make My Music Crisscross. Or whatever.
And you got the Mocky Moth one as well, I think.
Oh,
but
God.
Oh, one more thing before we close out. If you really, really want to see this game, you just can't just get yourself to play it, there are several attempts on YouTube to try and turn this into a movie, so just Google Night Trap the movie and keep an eye out for one of those.
Mm-hmm.
And if you open your heart to FMV games, you could check out Her Story, which is another good FMV game, and recent.
Yeah, I've heard about that one. I haven't gotten around to it yet, but it actually does look pretty interesting.
Yeah, so I like games that take FMV, and I sorry to keep rambling on about Night Trap, but this period of 1992 and FMV games on the Sega CD, people legitimately thought that this was where games were going, People were like, whoa, games are going to be like this. And Night Trap is maybe guilty of causing some of this, where people poured so much money into FMV games that it was a terrible idea.
Multimedia!
But at least Night Trap's good.
Well, it was a good attempt. I mean, we did get the Tex Murphy reinvention out of it, so... it wasn't completely all for naught. It was just kind of a noble failure, if anything.